Hello everybody and welcome to this Nurburgring 24-hour iRacing race review. We had an up and down time over the weekend. We had two cracks at it, both were failed attempts. In some sense, the absolute success was the amount of fun that we had and just how excited I am to go again. I've got another 24-hour race at Le Mans coming up this weekend, which I just cannot wait to get started. Our team is called the Mid-Pack Muppets. We are, as you might suggest, it might be suggested from the name, we're not taking ourselves too seriously, but we're absolutely in it to get on the podium and to hopefully get on one of the higher steps of the podium. So we'll see how we go. And that is the M4EM iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans, put on by Missed Apex podcast. There'll be a link to the broadcast in the notes of this video as well. But what we're going to go through today, and I'll try and keep this as brief as possible because I could talk for hours about this race. It was that much fun. But we're going to go through the attrition because I think that was absolutely a feature. Not a drawback, but actually a feature of this event. You could absolutely never count yourself out of the race because you knew that all it took was one moment, either in the dark or during the day, that someone would have a small mistake, especially in the split that we were in. We were sort of midway down the split list in the second and third sessions. So you were always in it. So you always had to keep going and keep that consistency there. We're going to go through sessions 1, which we had a sister car from Wildfire Racing in the TCR class. We're going to go through session 2, or our ill-fated, doomed session in the second time slot. And then we'll go through session 3, where we actually completed the 24 hours. And then finally, I'll go through the lessons that I learned this weekend as well, because although we didn't necessarily do what we wanted in the ranking, in the standings, I learned a hell of a lot that I can use in the next race, and things that I wouldn't do for next time as well. So, first of all, the attrition, and I think there's been a lot of videos out there about this. The likes of, and there's been a lot of criticism online about these events as well, and the way that people conduct themselves. And I think you need to take it back to the base level and just say, we're doing this for fun, whether you're doing it like me and streaming on Twitch or on YouTube, putting up videos. We're doing this because we love it, not because we expect to turn professional or get sponsorships or anything like that. We're doing this for fun. So if someone chooses, as Jimmy Broadbent 7 hours in or however many hours in it was, decided to pull the pin, they pull the pin, okay? Everyone's going to be disappointed because they want to watch his content. They want to be there with them doing that race. But if the actual streamer or the content creator isn't enjoying that race, I don't think that's going to be an enjoyable watch for you as the viewer anyway. So there were two very high profile ones. So Basic Ollie pulled out about 10 or so hours in, and they knew that for them, their race was over from a competitive sense, and that's what they were in it to do. They were in it to win, if not get a podium or top 5 position. So if they want to pull out because they're not going to enjoy the rest of that race, it's absolutely on them, and it's their prerogative to do so. So I feel props to them for, not going through with something that they weren't going to enjoy, and they were just going to be doing that to put up the numbers and to just get the watch hours and get the viewers that came with that. It wouldn't have been for the love of it, which is what this hobby and this pastime is for at the end of the day as well. So I just wanted to call that out. In terms of attrition though, we experienced it in our splits as well. People really fighting tooth and nail from the very first lap, which does segue nicely into what I'll get into in our our second attempt, because we did get fought very hard on lap 1, and no spoilers, but that didn't end particularly well. Moving on to, I guess, the broadcast split, and if you haven't seen it, so that was split 2 or session 2. Session 3, time slot 3. That was the broadcast split on RaceSpot TV. If you haven't seen this yet, Max Verstappen was part of Team Redline in that session. If you haven't seen it, I implore you, and I'm by no means a Verstappen fan in F1, but his sim racing exploits are nothing to be sniffed at. he is as quick, if not quicker, than he is in a real life car when he has those inputs and those G-forces taken away from him. He seems to be able to switch on to another level, dip toes in the grass, pull off these outrageous moves when one small mistake means your day is over. There's a great video up online of his night session where he reels in the first and second placed cars. They're on different strategies in terms of fuel, but he reels them in and passes them during that stint. And it's like they're a lower class car the way he goes past them both. So absolutely implore you to watch that if you haven't seen it so far. Ultimately, Team Redline, Verstappen's car ended up P3 in the broadcast split. Williams eSports took out that win. And again, I'm not going to go through it in too much detail, but I would implore you to look through the two pieces of controversy from Williams eSports this week. Again, we're here again, especially after Daytona 24 and the controversy there around qualifying on the apron. But Williams did win in the GT3 class after having, during the night session, taken out the GT4 class leader. It was then later on in this split that the Porsche Cup runner from Williams eSports, almost exactly the same section of the track, and again it was within the hour that the GT3 Williams eSports leader took out the GT4 leader, but the Porsche Cup class Williams eSports car took out the next in-line GT4 class leader, who took over from the ill-fated car that was taken out not long before that. So a couple of points of controversy there. Again, go see for yourself what actually happened. But it was worth noting because it was quite unbelievable that it happened to two GT4 leaders within a very short space of time. Now, leads me nicely on to Wildfire Racing. That's the team that I race with. We're all over the world. We did have a car in session 1, or time split 1. That was our Ember car racing the TCR class. A very strange race. This is the Aussie split, or what's known as the Aussie split, because it's 7 a.m. Australian time that this split starts. So if you're a reasonable Australian, you don't have family, you don't have obligations, you would probably run that split so you can run all during the day, do the night stint, and then come back to finish it bright and early in the morning. I'm not able to do that at the moment. It would be nice if I can down the line, but that session is not available to me. There were 9 runners in their class, which was fine. I was watching live their start, and they got taken out on lap 1. Actually, on lap 0, I should say, realistically. They got taken out through into Tiergarten before the start finished. So they qualified, I think it was P3 on the road. I might be getting confused. It might have been 3 or 4, might have been 4th actually. But in the queue, the leader and P2 took each other out. I won't assign blame to who actually instigated that, but our car, unfortunately, was the victim, the innocent victim in this, with a car right in front of them, T-boning and needing to pit for a meatball before the checkered flag, before the green flag was even raised. So that put them at least a lap down right from the beginning. They fought their way through the whole session. They did last 24 hours, up to about the 12-hour mark though. There were only 2 classified runners left in the TCR class. So they were in a fairly lonely race, because by the time they finished, they were about 10 laps or so behind the leaders. So there was no reasonable chance for them to actually take out that win, but they were assured of a podium with about 12 hours to go. So they were always going to keep in it and keep running, but yeah, fairly lonely place to be, especially when you're over an hour behind the leaders of the class. So going into hour 23 and hour 24, even if the other team in P1 quits, you're still not going to be able to overtake them and actually claim the win. So that was session 1 with our TCR car in the Wildfire Ember team. Session 2, we did plan to run this for our Blaze car, and that's the car that you can see here. So this is our TCR car, the Ember car. This is Blaze. So we're running the BMW M4 GT3. we had done an enormous amount of practice and preparation for this. We had everyone ready to go. We had one of my teammates qualify the car and run the first stint. I was due to get into the car on the second stint, and we would see where we go from there. But essentially the plan was, for me, it was about 11 p.m. at night on the Saturday night. I was planning to go to bed as normal after that stint, wake up in the morning fresh, ready to go, 7 or so hours into it. I couldn't join the session. So we actually had a situation where the car was registered. We had screenshots of it as well, but something must have gone awry at the point of registering the team. So my teammate ran the first stint, ran a really solid first hour of running. I couldn't get in the car. No one else could get in the car at that time as well. So we actually had no choice but to retire the car and to make a plan for session or time split for the broadcast session, the broadcast time slot. We had no other choice. We literally could not get into the driver's side door. So session 3, again, we get into it. I actually qualified this time. I ran the first stint because, again, it was ideal for me timing wise to do that. So the idea was I qualify the car, I run the first stint, I hand it over, I log off for a while, and it worked quite nicely. Qualified mid-pack. My first lap was decent. It was a good banker lap. Second lap, I actually ditched it in, where was it? It was near Flensgarten, I think. Just got a bit greedy. I was going for too much, and reasonably I dipped a couple of tires into the grass and off we went. And that was all she wrote for qualifying. Now, I would love to show you the replay of our race start and of, some footage during the race. One of my lessons learned, which we'll get to in a moment, was that I did not save the replay after 24 hours plus, with including qualifying, 24 hours plus of running. I didn't save the replay, which was an absolute rookie error on my behalf. So for the last few days, I've ummed and ahed about making this video without footage, without replays, and actually being able to tell the real story. I figured, I've got enough here to talk about that I would do a video, but I would have loved for this, for instance, to be able to show you exactly what happened, because it was highly controversial. We were running very nice on the first lap. I was being extremely patient. The team was talking to me, walking me through what was happening up ahead, what was happening behind. We had a Merc right behind us that was looking very feisty indeed, with a much higher I rating. We could tell they were quick, which was fine. But what happened was we almost got rear-ended I don't know what the corner is technically called, but I call it flip-flap, and I think it's been referred to as flip-flap. A very quick left-right kink in the middle of the lap. We very nearly got rear-ended into that corner. So a couple of corners later, when we're going up through the valley and into Bravery, I actually pulled over to the left. I lifted off the throttle to let them by. And unfortunately, I would say the blame from our point of view was about 60-40 on them. 60% being that they could have used a lot more of the road than they did try to. The 40% of my blame was that I didn't necessarily need to give up the position. I could have stayed in it. I could have fought until the Dottinger Hohe and actually waited for a safer place to let them by. In our defense, and the reasoning or the thinking that we had behind this was we were going to get rear-ended anyway. So that was our feeling, that if we tried to risk it and keep going and keep that lead over this other car, and we were, I think it was about 0.4 of a second behind the car in front. So we were by no means holding anyone up at this stage. We were all just single filing, sorting out the first lap. But what ended up happening was netcode, essentially. So on the replay, and we were very upset to start with, we immediately towed because we knew that with the meatball, we were not going to be able to get through the rest of the half of the lap. We weren't going to risk taking anyone else out at that point as well. So we decided to tow straight away. But what happened was essentially netcode dictated that they had hit us, which pushed us right out onto the left-hand side of the road. We then catch the grass and spear straight into them again. So it was a bit of karma that they got taken out in the process as well. We didn't check later on to see where they were up to. We chalked it up as a racing incident. It was unfortunate that there was that much aggression on lap 1, but we can't control what other people do. So that was what it was. Now, after that very disappointing incident, I did run the remainder of the stint. It was trouble-free, and then I went to bed. Very dejected and a bit sad that we got pushed down to sort of I think 24 or 25 at that stage. There was obviously a lot more carnage within our session that was the case. I then wake up and I'm due to be in the car about 20 minutes or so after I wake up. So I get up, I come into the seat, I check with the guys, I see how everything's going, and we're in reasonable shape. Again, we've fought back to around P20, and we will see during the course of this as well that P20 was about the barometer, or the thermometer I should say, or the thermostat that was where we were in the race no matter what. So that should give you an idea, again, no spoilers, but should give you an idea of where we finished up. So I get in the car, it's nighttime now on the Nurburgring. I've done a lot of nighttime practice, right? This was not foreign to me. This was not new. You can see on the screen above that this is me in sunset conditions, running laps and getting more experience on Nordschleife. So by no means was it, will be out of place here. So I get in the car and I immediately say to my team, this doesn't feel comfortable. Obviously the car feels completely different to what it was when I got in when it was daytime and temperatures and things like that. But I just didn't feel comfortable. And it showed. So halfway through the lap, going into the foxhole, so the steep downhill with a left-hand kink that goes into a bit of an S, I severely misjudged the turn-in point. So I just didn't turn in early enough, which pushed me out to the right-hand side of the road. I caught the grass and we wrecked, essentially. It was big impact. I tow, feel horrible. We're in the pits. I'm apologizing to everyone because I've just ruined our race. Everyone's obviously very understanding, and this team is brilliant. So it was really not a big deal. We just had to adjust our expectations. So that was really the catalyst for what happened later on. We fought back from this, and everyone else, to their credit, during the night session was absolutely spot on, super clean. I jumped back in during the day session, again, very clean, very spotless. We didn't have too much battling after that point through to the end of the race. And actually, one thing I wanted to mention was our pace was fantastic. Our pace, if we avoided the damage and the time we spent in pits, we had the pace to win that race comfortably. So when we looked at the results after the session, we had the fastest average lap in the whole split. We didn't have the best I rating. We were about mid-pack in terms of I rating and qualifying pace as well, obviously. But we had the pace to do very well in that split. So it was very disappointing. This was really exemplified when one of my teammates, actually the same teammate who qualified us in the first split, but we couldn't join him. Him and I had 6 hours at the end of the race where we just alternated. So we essentially did about 1,000 kilometers or so of just us alternating stints for 1 hour. And it was like clockwork. We would jump in the car, we would almost like clockwork hit 8 minutes 20, 8:18, 8:16, 8:14, and then get to 8:12 for our final push lap, then pit. And we both did the same thing. It was so satisfying, so satisfying. But that just showed, if we had a clean race and if we were a bit more consistent, avoided those little errors, and I am the main culprit in our team for that one for this race, unfortunately, but if we could have avoided that, we had a big result there on the cards, which gives me huge hope for the next race in the future. Now, lessons learned. And this is something I just wanted to call out because I did learn so much from all of this, and I wrote down things every so often when I had a light bulb moment to go, oh my gosh, I could have done that differently, or this is what I would do next time, or I didn't know that existed, whatever it might have been. So the first one is don't give up positions on lap 1 if you don't need to. And I actually put this in the race preview video that I did for this event. And I mentioned that, and I followed my own advice. To my credit, I followed my own advice. I did practice what I preach. But I've kind of flipped on this a little bit. And bear with me, if the moment is right. Okay, that's the caveat here. Now, on lap 1, if someone is fighting you and you can absolutely let them pass safely, do it. Okay, absolutely do so. In my position though, I was in a part of the track where I couldn't comfortably do it. And if they rear-ended us, we weren't going to be able to avoid that. So I made the judgment call to let them by, or to attempt to let them by, I should say, because it was obviously doomed at the point that I did. But if I had the time again, I might take that and say, you know what? They took us out. There was nothing we could do about that. It was not my fault. That's racing. Okay. Whereas, as I said, I still apportion about 40% of the blame onto me because I allowed that situation to unfold the way it did. So that's my first lesson learned. Lesson number 2, more practice. The thing that makes me think that there was more scope for practice, and there definitely was. I was running some races, some practice races, but also some Porsche Cup races and other races during the week. I wasn't solely focused on this. And this is going to be different for everybody as well, depending on how much time you actually have to practice. Again, we all want to have fun on the sim. We don't want to just be putting in laps to, for the sake of it, just to really learn your lines and things like that. If we're not going to enjoy it, don't worry. Okay. But for me, I definitely could have put more practice in. And the reason I say that is those last 6 hours of running like clockwork with my teammate, just alternating stints, I felt so at home. I felt like there is no way I could have put a foot wrong unless there were other cars around jostling for position. I felt so confident in my ability to hit those lap times and hit all my marks, every apex, the way I did, because at that point I was 100% confident and comfortable. Okay, so that showed me that I probably could have gotten to that position a little bit earlier if I had put in another, 4, 5, 6 hours of practice during the week. So that's where I want to get to for the next race. And I'm doing that at the moment for the Le Mans 24-hour race this weekend. I'm making sure that it is becoming automatic. I'm not there yet. Okay, I'm absolutely not there, but I will be before race day. Okay, so that's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3. After a sleep, and this is for the longer 12, 24-hour endurance races, but after a sleep, one thing I would do differently next time, after waking up and getting into my first stint, I will go into a test session just to practice and just get comfortable, get a feel for the conditions again. Because even though I had done a lot of night racing, waking up and jumping straight into the sim, I was a bit of a fish out of water. Okay, and that's why I was saying to my teammates, the car hadn't changed. The car was exactly as it was when I went to bed, but it felt foreign because I was still waking up. So that was absolutely on me and something that I will do differently next time. And just a really great lesson to learn because I wouldn't have thought of that previously. Lesson number 4, again, it's for night racing. And again, I apportion a bit of this to the crash that I had during the night session when I just woke up. But that was having lights on in here in the sim room, and also having all my overlays the same way I do during daytime running. What it meant was that when I was going into the foxhole, getting ready to pick my braking point, pick the turn-in point, and see the apex, I couldn't. Okay, there were too many shadows, there were too many distractions, there was glare coming from the lighting in here, and my overlays were actually not necessarily where the apex was, but my attention was drawn to them rather than key points of the track. So they're 2 things I would actually absolutely change for next time. So turning the overlays off, and also turning as much of the lighting in here down as possible. Even during daytime, if I don't have the lights on in here, it is great for racing because my attention is drawn to the screens. So again, that's absolutely something I would do differently. And another thing that I just would not have thought of had this wreck not happened. So I do feel like there were absolutely positives that came out of this. Okay, what are we up to? Number 5. And this is knowing your pacing for different fuel levels. And this is something that came to me in the last 6 hours when I was just running lap after lap, alternating stints. So I was constantly back in the car. But knowing what level or what pacing you should be running based on your fuel level, what it does is it reduces the chances of you running a time, and traffic obviously will change this anyway in endurance and multi-class racing, but it will stop you looking at the times, okay? And if you don't hit a certain time, be disappointed. Maybe push a bit more than you want to or than you should at that stage of a race. It just puts everything into perspective so you know sort of what you should be running for that fuel level. So again, another thing in practice to take note of. Putting the time in to know exactly what you should be. Obviously temperatures and so many other factors change, but having a good idea on that will just put your mind to rest a little bit when you're going through, just to make sure that you're hitting the right numbers that you should be. Okay, number 6. And this is one that I got reminded by my team. I could not tell you how many times. I lost count during the race of how many times I was reminded that this was my fault. And I say that with love. I love them. They all are very good-natured, very well-intentioned. But I picked the livery, and you will see on here the Blaze car. Oh, where am I pointing? See down the near the exhaust, I've got a green Spotify logo. Then if you look down, directly down there underneath the rear wing, you'll see a 3-pronged claw, and it's a Monster Energy logo. Now I was reminded, and I knew this as well, when a an energy drink sponsor is on a car in sim racing, they're generally the ones you look out for and that you look to shy away from, you look to avoid. We were that car this weekend. We weren't causing chaos necessarily, but it is known as a bit of a curse within sim racing that energy drink sponsors, if they're on the car, you should expect something to go wrong. And plenty did go wrong this weekend. So yeah, the curse is real. Pay attention to it. I will create a meme, and it will be me putting a Monster logo in the recycling bin on the desktop, because yeah, definitely making a return onto the livery of a Wildfire car that I make, or that I will drive, because I absolutely believe in that curse now. So that's a great lesson learned as well. Now, finally, the last lesson that no, you know what? There's two more. So lesson 7. And this is a very simple one, but just if there is damage coming onto the car during the night or during the day, or over the course of an endurance race, you want to know what effect it's having on the car. So this is just something that I just pulled off the top of my head. It wasn't on my notes, but making note of your top speed and making note of the gearing that gets it there as well. So for instance, on the Dottinger Hohe, or the large straight on the Nurburgring Nordschleife, we were constantly wondering if we had engine damage, if we should think about having a contingency plan if we weren't hitting our top speed. We didn't know what our top speed should be necessarily, because we didn't track that in quali and in practice. So that's absolutely something, when you have your setup finalized and you know what that top end speed's going to be, note it somewhere. Log it on a notepad, on your race plan, on your schedule, wherever it needs to go. Know what that number is, so that during the race, if you've picked up damage, you know how you're tracking, you know how far down on top speed you are, so you can make a plan to counteract that. Okay, not least, and this is sort of why I've got one of my cars just circulating from a sunset into night session here as well. I didn't save the replay file, so that's my last lesson learned. I would love to be able to bring you some highlights and some footage from the actual race itself, but I don't have it. I can't show you the burnouts that I did at the end, which were not the best. I need to work on those, but I'll save them for a podium or a win. But yeah, I will absolutely save the replay file next time. It was a long race, and when it came to finishing, I wanted to get out of the session, have a chat with the guys, and go through the results and the other data that we had access to. So I didn't save that. So anyway, that wraps up the Nurburgring 24-hour iRacing review for Wildfire Racing, for Ember and for Blaze. Cannot wait to bring you a preview, and I will be doing a preview for the M4EM Le Mans 24-hour presented by Mist Apex podcast race very soon. So until then, take care, and we'll see you on the next one.